Hello, scholars. This is Tanya Wilcox from TheDream.Us. I see several of you are starting to join this gathering. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today. And we hope that we give you some resources, some tips, and that you also share with us how you are doing. We know that this is a stressful time for all of us, that all of us or many of us are in isolation. I haven't left my house except for grocery shopping in the past two and a half weeks now. But I'm connecting with friends through Zoom or all kind of phone. I hope you are all doing the same thing. So again, thank you for joining us today. And let's get started. Joining me today, we have Sadhana. Say hi, Sadhana, who you all get emails from Sadhana, so you know her very well. And we also have Elizabeth Hernandez, which some of you might have talked to before because she's our wellness advocate. And she will be leading and talking a lot during this session. So first we wanna start with learning a little bit about how you are doing. So in your chat box, all of you, please open your chat box right now and start writing in 2 words to tell us how you're feeling. And then we're gonna use those words and do a little word cloud later and show that to all of you. So please type in, you know, if you're feeling content or tired or happy or stressed. I can see some of the words. I love, someone said feeling optimistic. I love that. So keep typing the 2 words and we're collecting them. I know that for me, on one hand, I'm happy because my kids are back home and I get to spend time with them. But on the other hand, it is stressed. It is a stressful environment for so many different reasons. So please keep typing in those words. And in the meantime, as you do that, just to remind you that Elizabeth is available to you as your wellness advocate. She brings a whole wealth of experience on working with undocumented students, to supporting them, their mental health. She's a trained psychologist. So she has much to share with you, and she's a great listener. So reach out to her as you need. Okay, so if you're all done typing your 2 words, we will move on. And one of the things that it's important for you to know is that you're not alone. We are all experiencing one stress or another. And last week, we did a survey of all of our scholars, and we had over 1,200 respond to the question of what are your current needs right now? And as you can see, a big number are having stressors around paying rent, paying utilities or food and meals. So we know it can be a struggle, or that it is a struggle for most of you, and you're not alone. A lot of you are experiencing this. Some of you also having issues with either Wi-Fi access or computer to do those online classes. I know some of you are stressed about the online class environment and wondering if you can be successful with that. We have shared a graphic with some tips on how to be successful in online classes. So I hope you've received that graphic, or you can find it on our Facebook page, or we can send it out later too. So know that we understand, we know what's going on with you because you've told us, and we're trying to provide help and services to help you through this time. And with that, I hope Sadhana might be ready to show us the word cloud. We created a word cloud with all the feelings that you put in your chat box. So Sadhana is gonna share with you. Here's where you typed in So the big one, right, is stressed, anxious, tired, and overwhelmed. Yes, all of us are feeling that. But I also love seeing the words of calm and motivated and optimistic and grateful. So we can hold both these kind of negative feelings and these positive feelings together and at the same time. So I'm hoping that you are able to have both these positive and stressful feelings with us. But again, this heart with these words show you that you're not alone, that we're all feeling this. So with that, let's get back to the PowerPoint. So let me share again my screen for you. And with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Ellie, who's gonna lead us in an exercise to get us started. Go ahead, Elizabeth. Are you still there?
Had not unmuted myself.
There you go.
I'd like to get us started with a centering exercise to really kind of get us into the present moment. I think right now it might be really difficult sometimes to concentrate or focus as you all are really kind of entering the world of online instruction, right? So hopefully this will be helpful. So begin by taking some deep breaths in and out, in and out. Become aware as you breathe of sitting in this chair and being in this room. Now begin to scan your body for any sensations that might be present. Then bring your attention into your heart area. See if you can notice what you're feeling there right now. And you may not feel anything in particular, and that's fine too. Now bring to mind someone in your life who you absolutely love. Someone who the moment you think of when you feel genuine happiness well inside of you. It could be a family member, a friend, a romantic partner, a mentor, or perhaps a child. Maybe for you it's a pet that brings that joy to your experience the moment you think of them. See if you can get an image of that loved one. Imagine that they're right here in front of you. See if you can create as much detail in your mind as possible about that special person or animal. As you see them in your mind's eye, notice what you're feeling in your body. Connect to that feeling of happiness and joy. This is called loving kindness. See if you can send that loving kindness to the special person, sending to them joy and happiness and health and peace. Use whatever words make sense to you. May you be happy. May you be protected from danger. May you be content. May you find joy in life. Find the words that fit for you and stay connected to that feeling. Now, see if you can send that feeling into your whole body, wishing that same thing you wished for that loved one to yourself. May I be happy. May I be peaceful or at ease. May I be healthy and protected from harm. Notice what happens as you try it. What do you feel in your heart? What do you notice in the rest of your body? If you feel any sensations, just notice them. Begin to focus once again on your breath, breath that breathes itself. Really notice the sensations as you inhale calm and exhale stress. Take a couple more gentle breaths in and out, in and out. And when you feel ready, go ahead and open your eyes. We can go to the next slide. So I picked that centering exercise today because I know a lot of us are really thinking a lot about really wishing health and wellness and peace and joy to our loved ones, maybe even to like our communities, our local communities, our larger communities, maybe even the world right now, right? And, you know, oftentimes it's easier to do that, to care and worry about the rest, right, of those around us. And we forget that we can do that and that we deserve and oftentimes we need that same love ourselves, right? So I wanted us to start there because hopefully by the end of today, we'll realize the importance of both this need to be present and this pause and, you know, this reflection that is really necessary. And it's important because, you know, what we're all dealing with, you know, we do kind of have to name what we're feeling, right? And, you know, I read an article that really described it well. The link is here on this slide. And it's really about grief, right? And the fact that we're all really experiencing this collective grief. You know, we're grieving both things that we've lost. So I like this image of it's okay to grieve for many of us that may be graduating, that are really looking forward to that. Maybe you had a trip planned, maybe you were really excited about something and now it's not going to happen, right? Due to the global health crisis. And, you know, there's really this sense of the world has changed, and it has, right? And we know that although there is this sense that it's not going to be permanent, that there is temporary, that we realize, though, that things will be different, right? That, you know, I've heard a lot of the new normal, and it's really hitting us, and you know, we're grieving, right? The thing, in addition to the things that we're grieving that we may have lost, or that whether it's even like the loss of our normal routine, the loss of access to certain activities that were really, really part of our wellness, actually, we're also grieving things that haven't happened yet, that we're anticipating will happen, that we're worried will happen. And they're usually things that are negative, right? Worry about the future, worry about getting ill, our loved ones being ill, right? And so, you know, I like to really differentiate between the grief, that the things that we've lost, things that are different, and also the grief of anticipation, worrying about things that could worsen, that could get worse, right? And so it's maybe helpful to talk about it in the sense of grief, because as we know, there are 5 stages of grief, you know, and the author of this article, David Kessler, he really talks about, you know, what are the 5 stages of COVID-19 grief, right? And so the first stage is denial. And so this idea that the virus won't affect us. And you may have found yourself there. Maybe some anger, right? This like, hey, I can't do the thing that I was really looking forward to doing. Maybe even some bargaining, right? Like, well, maybe if I do this, then I guess things will be okay. Or I'm willing to give this up, but not for long, right? Maybe there's some sadness or pain. A lot of like, I'm not sure when this is going to end. I'm not able to talk to certain people, and I'm really feeling that pain. And then, you know, also acceptance, right? This idea that like, this is happening. I'm sure we've all gone through that period where, that moment where, okay, this is really serious, right? And now I have to figure out what to do next. And then we all really kind of vacillate between these stages of grief. We can go to the next slide. So what do we do with grief, right? What do we do with loss? What do we do about worry about the future? Well, we really have to balance this, you know, what's within our control and what's not. And so there's this wonderful resource. It's called, it's by Dr. Russ. I actually can't see the end of his last name because of my Zoom. Sorry about that. But hopefully you all can see it. He came up with the acronym of FACE COVID, and really, you know, pointing us and helping us understand what's within our control and what's not, right? So by focusing on what's in our control, by acknowledging what we're feeling, So taking that pause, taking those moments to really check in with yourself. One easy way to do that, because oftentimes it's hard to be present, it's hard to stay engaged, it's hard to concentrate. One thing you can really rely on that's constant is your breath, like coming back into your body. Our body actually allows us and really shows us how to, how to make sure that we are trying to help connect. We can just really reference our body, right? And hopefully by doing those things, we can be more engaged in what we're doing. So even if perhaps we're not engaged in everything that we're doing, it's really important that we at least engage in the one thing, pick one thing, and really try to be present in that thing, even if it's only for a few minutes. And then the next part is really about, okay, what are some ways that I can feel a better sense of control? And one of them is through committed action. So really, oftentimes this is coming up for a lot of folks where they're picking something to focus on that they can be helpful with. I know a lot of my neighbors are making homemade masks right now. Some of my neighbors are, feeding elderly neighbors or going grocery shopping for others. Or maybe others who are really good at cleaning and organizing are really trying to be diligent about that. So really kind of getting into some form of action. The other thing is about opening up, right? This is a time where we all feel kind of vulnerable, and it's important, right, that we can open up and that we can kind of get to that place where we can share how we're feeling, even if it's just with one person. For those that you might not have access to feeling comfortable opening up with someone, this could be a time to journal, right? This is also a time where we can get in touch with our values, to really, really ground ourselves in what we're about and what we care about. And that can really help us face the uncertain, right? And then, the most important thing right now is identifying resources, right? That's probably why you all joined today. And then, I love that part of this acronym is really kind of reminding us too, we also have to protect our health. And in a health crisis, one of the things that we do, particularly this one, we do need to think about how can we stay healthy through, making sure that we are washing our hands regularly and social distancing. You can go to the next slide.
And maybe all of you can put in the chat box, tell us what are some of the things that you can control in your environment, in your life right now. So I know Ari just said she can control her phone usage. So start sharing some of those things with each other, right? So tell us, what are some things that you're doing you can control? Or some Anna saying, understanding that it is okay that some of my work at home hours shift to early morning or later in the evening to accommodate time with my 2 children.
Awesome.
Yeah. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Yeah, and I love that one, being really boundaried, like, okay, this is the time I'm going to dedicate to studying, to academics. So letting my family know if I live in a household, letting my roommate know that, hey, between this hour and this hour, I really need to focus, and I'm going to try to, to do that. Maybe also thinking about a routine, right? We are in control of a routine, and some of us really, really need it right now, right? And so the next part is really about pushing us beyond this idea of self-care, because right now it wouldn't just be enough if we just focused on ourselves, right? I think this situation is really calling us to attend to our social well-being, especially in the context of increased social isolation and social distancing and actual physical barriers, between socializing right now. We really have to think of more creative and different ways to stay connected with friends and loved ones. For me, I can't tell you how meaningful it's been to get these wonderful text messages from people I haven't heard from in a long time checking in on me. That feels very, very loving and caring right now. And so I then, knowing that it feels so good, I try to dedicate a part of my day to do that to people I know. Or if I thought of you, I'd like to, I try to be more intentional about letting people know, hey, I thought of you and I just wanted to check in on you. The next part is emotional well-being. And when we think about emotional well-being, we all immediately think of like mental illness and mental health. But this is really, pushing us to what emotional well-being is also about joy. It's also about creativity, right? Which is why I picked the centering exercise of loving kindness, because I think this is it's very important for us right now to make sure that we're making enough time for fun, for joy, for distraction, for play. For those of us that do have small children right now, it's very easy to connect to that because, our young children really need that all the time and they really can't get enough of it. But it's really infectious, and I highly recommend that this is the time to think about what is that thing that, how can I bring fun and creativity into my life right now? And then the last one is physical well-being. And when we think of physical well-being, oftentimes we immediately think of these extremes, like I need to be like, running every morning for, miles and miles. I need to, really be sweating and, doing this extreme exercise. But the truth is, physical well-being also calls us to rest, is also about pausing and taking the time. But in all of this busyness and anxiety, oftentimes we don't realize that our body is going, 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 going. It's a very adrenaline rich environment. And we do need to make the effort to really slow down once in a while. And sometimes during the daytime, that really requires us to kind of let it out and, really almost like release the pent up anxiety and energy. And then other times when it's more appropriate, especially right before bed, or maybe even first thing in the morning, is really about pausing, reflecting, resting. We can go to the next slide. Well, and it sounds like everyone is already taking a lot of efforts and taking a lot of the steps that we all know, that we know during, the average day and average circumstances. These are the things that can help us, right?
And someone said, try not to gain weight. Believe me, I am with you on that one.
Let me put away my peanut butter M&Ms. Yeah, it's bad. I think that when I'm thinking about the things that we already know, we tend to forget in moments of crisis, because this is a crisis, right? This is a global health crisis. And we forget sometimes in the state of emergency and a state of, like I said, an adrenaline rich environment, we can tend to lose track and forget our strengths, right? And we all have individual strengths, we have, community strengths. And I think, as immigrants, there are so many strengths that we already have that can really come in handy right now, right? So whether that's really thinking about how actually the immigrant community is really at the forefront. They are really the frontline, providers right now in this fight against this disease, right? And so I really like this idea of giving credit to the frontline healthcare workers, many of whom are DACA recipients, who are on the front lines and risking their lives and the lives of their loved ones, right? Every time they go and, and serve the community, right? Then there are all the folks that work in the service industry. These are essential workers who right now are still getting up every morning and going to work, right? When maybe the rest of us are working very comfortably remotely from home, or we're able to take classes from home. There are many, many industries right now that are really there. These are our parents, our siblings, our loved ones, right, who are on the front line, right? It's more likely that you are going to know somebody who is really, really participating in the fight against this, and really taking an active and very heroic role, right? And then there's the part of the community strengths that's not so pretty, right? And this is the idea that this experience of the uncertainty of the future, a lot of job barriers, housing barriers, a lot of economic barriers, these are things that the immigrant community already knows a thing or two about, right? And so I love Julio Salgado's image, his most recent image of, you know, you can't visit your family, you have dangerous working conditions, you're relying on technology to see your grandma, you can't leave the country. Welcome to living like us, you know. And I think this was very powerful because this is also an opportunity where a lot of folks, because we're living in and experiencing for the health reasons, this is an opportunity to bring to light the connections to many folks like the undocumented community that has already been struggling with this kind of uncertainty on a daily basis and has really been trying to like bring this issue to light and build compassion and build empathy. Well, here it is, right? So these are just the ways that we can really build on what our community already has, and we can really remind ourselves and connect ourselves to the community strengths that we always had, and now they're really, really shining more than ever. We can go to the next slide. One of the things that I, as someone who is continuing and has the fortune of continuing to be able to work from home and, work with students who are telling me, and even, as your wellness advocate, hearing from you all how this has affected you. A lot of times you're not coming and telling me, I'm struggling, but you're saying to me, I'm worried about my father who isn't taking this seriously and is still continuing to live life as usual. I'm worried about this family member who's risking their lives every day. Yesterday, I worked with a client who said to me, my father, who's undocumented, doesn't have a driver's license, and he has to commute an hour and a half to work every day. And we're worried that given the safer at home, even though he works in an essential work, he doesn't have a letter from his provider. And because he doesn't have a driver's license, he's really putting himself at risk of being stopped by the police and being questioned for, why are you out, right? And so, her concerns are really very much around, how do I help my family? And how do I convince my father that maybe this is the time to think about staying home, right? And not making that choice and maybe not putting himself at risk. And so I found these resources. They're just examples, but here in Los Angeles, where I live, an organization put out, these sort of like facts for immigrants in different languages. And so I just put examples of these fact sheets that a lot of the folks that I work with have been using to provide information to their loved ones so that they can come up with a plan to keep each other safe. Another great resource that I found through We All Grow Latina, which is a group I belong to, a sort of like networking group. They came out with these sort of like for Latinx immigrants who might need some assistance translating some of the news that they're digesting and getting about this disease and wanting to translate it accurately to their family. Here's this resource on how to talk to their families about prevention, for instance, about the disease, about vulnerable populations, about testing, about some of the precautions that we're going to take. So I like this idea of, instead of right now, we're so preoccupied with the idea of spreading the disease to each other. I want us to reframe that and think about spreading wellness. How do we infect our family members with wellness, with information that's actually going to be useful, right? And so, one of the things that I like to refer to is, when we're having anxious thoughts, I want you to ask yourself if it passes the 3C test, right? The 3 C's. The first C is, is this thought, is it correct? Is it accurate? Is it true, right? Is it correct? And then it has to pass the next test. Is it constructive? Is it actually helpful for me to get where I want to go and what I want to do? And then the last C is compassionate. Is it compassionate? So when we're thinking about our thoughts and whether they're helpful or not, we really want to make them pass the 3C test, right? It's correct, constructive, and compassionate. The next slide. I think this is Tanya.
Yes, we also want to give you some key things for you to know. One, I know someone just asked a little bit about DACA renewal. We want you to renew your DACA as soon as possible. If your DACA expires at any point in 2020, renew it now. We don't know when the Supreme Court is going to make a decision, so the sooner you renew it, the better. And USCIS is still processing DACA renewal applications, and if you cannot get to your biometrics appointment, it's okay. They have said that they're going to use previous biometrics that you've done in the past to process your applications. So do that. Someone mentioned in the chat that they're worried that if they are not able to renew on time, that you might lose the scholarship. And do not worry about that. Our scholarship will remain with you because we know that this is an unprecedented time. The second thing is, do know that you can have access to some healthcare. One thing is that the government passed one of the recent laws that they passed gave enough funding to make testing available for COVID-19 for free for anyone, regardless of immigration status. So I know that not everybody can get a test right now because the test might not be available. But if a health clinic or a hospital or a doctor has the tests, you can access those. And usually they're not testing unless you're showing some symptom. But if you do, or someone you know does, the testing is for free. And it won't be considered as a negative factor in any public charge analysis. The other thing is that ICE has made a statement that they will not carry out any enforcement operations near any healthcare facility. So know that in this, where it says more info, when we send you the PowerPoint, we will send you this PowerPoint later out today or tomorrow, along with the recording of this webinar. And also I know Sadana has been sharing via the chat box the link to the PowerPoint. If you click on it, you should be able to look at the PowerPoint and get access to all these links. But if you're not, don't worry, we will send you this information. But if you go to that more info link, it will take you to NILC, who has a lot of information about healthcare for undocumented people. The other thing to know is that if you have DACA or TPS, meaning you had a Social Security and had a worker's permit, you may be eligible for unemployment. The rules vary by state, so you would have to go check with the unemployment office or the website, because you can't leave home, but it's on the website to see how you could apply and if you are eligible for unemployment. And also know unemployment is an insurance. So when you work, you and your employer is paying a little bit of money for the as an insurance, so that unemployment would be available in cases like the ones that were that is happening now. So because it's an insurance, it's not a public benefit. Therefore, it will not count against you as a public charge either in the future. So just those three important messages for you to keep in mind as we go through this period in time. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
So, last but not least, we wanted to really point you to a wealth of resources that are out there. So Immigrants Rising is a really wonderful general resource. They put together a host of different types of supports for undocumented students, or really undocumented community members, period. Including, one of the great things that they have is they have twice weekly wellness gatherings. And I will be giving hosting the wellness gathering, presenting the wellness gathering on Wednesday, April 8th. at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. But it happened every Sundays and and Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And I really have found them very helpful, whether it's being led through a meditation exercise, a journaling exercise, any kind of topics that are really salient right now, given the situation. And then TheDream.Us has also compiled resources, so the link is there. And in terms of mental health, one of the things that we have presented on here before are empowerment strategies and sort of self-care strategies in a post-DACA era. And we did that webinar, I want to say it was last year, right, Tanya? And, you know, Dr. Luz Garcini, who created this document and these resources, really adapted them recently in order to really think about what are the resources that might be more helpful now that we are facing this health crisis. A lot of them you'll see are pretty similar, but maybe the links and the resources are a little bit more salient now. So this is a wonderful document. I highly encourage you to take a look at them and really think about, you know, what are the strategies that we've already been doing and already been, you know, referencing, especially in the age of uncertainty around DACA and around immigration reform. How can we build on those now that we're facing another challenge, right? And then I also linked two different articles that I really found helpful. They really give clear tips of what are some ways that you can take care of your mental health. What are some wellness tips? And, you know, across the board, everyone's really, you know, saying you need to have a routine. Now that you're home and things feel, there's a little bit more leeway and flexibility sometimes inherently in online instruction. There's a lot of recorded maybe classes where you don't necessarily have to go at a certain time and you have to be anywhere at a certain time. It can really create a lot of maybe some chaos and disorganization. It can really lead to that. And so it's really important to be more diligent than ever before on having a routine and creating a routine for yourself. The beauty and the flexibility of being at home is that you can really do it in a way that works for you. So I've even, as an example, adapted my work schedule, noting that now that I don't have to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning to commute to and from work every day and be home in time to be, you know, with my 3-year-old, I now can sleep in so I can start my day later, right? So like here are some great ways that we can think about adjusting our schedule and yet really creating and making sure that we have a schedule to begin with, right? And then the last resource that I mentioned before that I talked about, the acronym FACE COVID, there's a wonderful video and an ebook. So we linked both the video and the ebook there so that we can, you know, really have, you can really look more deeply into the various techniques and strategies for how to both balance this idea that you can't control a lot of things that are going on right now, and yet you can really center yourself and help yourself focus on those things that you can control. Next slide. So this is just about my availability. And so I wanted to just remind you all that I am available to take your calls. Although these are the hours that I am, you know, available to take your calls, you feel free, especially now, to send a text message and say, hey, you know, can we set up a time to call? And I'm very open to that. Right now is really a time to be a lot more flexible. And, you know, you don't really have to worry so much about the time so much. But if you are having a difficult time getting a hold of me, just send me a message and then we'll definitely arrange to make sure that I can call you at a time that it works for the both of us. But yeah, I'm here for you. And, you know, right now, this is a time that I can really help you either connect to resources in your local community. I can be a bridge in case those resources are not available right now, given that a lot of places are closed or, you know, all the services are really limited to telehealth and you may or may not be able to do that. I can be a great alternative for now. So please take advantage. That's what we're here for. us. And, speaking of this idea of like both physical well-being, being both pausing and shaking it out and releasing a lot of energy, I'm going to time us for the next 30 seconds. Do any physical activity, standing, it can be jumping up in place, jumping jacks, dancing, push-ups, whatever you want to do for 30 seconds. And I will start the clock now.
And so Donna, put your video on. I'm going to dance. I love merengue, so unfortunately I don't. So Donna, what are you doing? I love that. You looks like you're giving us a lot of energy.
Thank goodness I don't have downstairs neighbors. Okay, 3, 2, 1. All right.
I could dance all day. Love that. Well, again, thank you everyone for being with us today. Stay in touch. We'll stay in touch with you. We love you. And many hugs from all of us. Have a good night.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.